We hear much about having a God experience. Well, actually, every experience is a God experience when we know that our consciousness is God being conscious. You see, knowing this, we know there is one who experiences, and this one is God, identified as you. God is the experience, and God is the one who has the experience. Now, I know that the way seems long and it seems hard, but all the while the seeming burden is growing lighter. Listen to this from the Gospel according to Thomas. Quote, Jesus said, "The kingdom of the Father is like a woman who was carrying a jar full of meal. While she was walking on a distant road, the handle of the jar broke. The meal streamed out behind her on the road. She did not know it. She had noticed no accident. After she came to her house, she put the jar down. She found it empty." End of quote. Do you know, this is the way it is with us. We do come out on the other side. We do come to that point where the seeming burdens drop away. We do come to that point when, after it seems that we have been carrying burdens for years and years and years, we put the jar down and we found that there is no burden. Even when we were not fully aware of it, the seeming problems were dropping away one by one. Actually, what was taking place was that as we perceived more of the actuality, as we perceived more of God being what God is, the fewer the so-called problems became. Oh, I know, sometimes it has seemed the way was very dark. Some of these so-called problems have seemed very real and at times very serious. Nonetheless, we do come to a point where we put the jar down and there is no meal in it. And it is a wonderful thing to realize, too, that as we have been going along on this path, even though we may not have been aware of it, the so-called problems, the so-called burdens, were dropping away, even as the meal was streaming away from the jar. Now, there is another way, too, of looking at this thing. For those of us who have been along this path for so long and seem to have so many problems to solve along the way, one of the most important aspects of God that it is necessary to see in this kind of a situation is that there is no time in God. God has no awareness of time. And if we can perceive that our life, the life that is alive right here and now as our life, is immeasurable in terms of time, we will perceive also that there has been no time of problems, no time of troubles. If in our perception we can be aware, fully aware, that never was there a beginning, never can there be an ending, we can also see that there is no time of trouble. We can also see that all of this so-called illusion, from what is called birth to what has been called death, is but a split second in the eternity, the beginningless, endless nature of our being. If we can perceive this, then we can really have a perspective of this thing that seems to tell us that we've been a long, long way along this path, a long time on this path, and that we have had many, many problems. Never measure your eternal existence in terms of a so-called human lifetime. This whole so-called lifespan, as I said, is but a split second in your eternal experience. And this, even this split second, is but illusion, keep your perspective. Now there is another aspect of this thing called time that it would be well for us to examine right here. So often I hear something like this. Someone will say, well, I see things so clearly in the morning during my study and contemplation, but when I go out into the business world and go about my daily affairs, things come up that irritate me, that annoy me, and before long I'm feeling so burdened, and all the light that I seem to have realized in the morning is just completely obliterated. What can I do about this? Well, of course, we can't do anything about anything, but we can see something here. First of all, it is well when we are drawing to a close in our morning contemplation to realize that the consciousness that we are right then is the consciousness that we remain during the whole day and night. That the consciousness we are does not change. We do not change into another identity when we go forth from our homes into the business world. The consciousness we are does not become another consciousness by sallying forth and dealing with others. It is well to know that the light we are in our morning contemplation is the light that we remain throughout the day. This light that we are is never brighter. This light that we are can never dim. There can be no more and no less consciousness. It is well, too, to realize that there is no lapse of time between the morning contemplation and the day's activity. All is, and all is right now, the same consciousness that is contemplating remains the same consciousness that is active throughout the day's activity, and there is no time lapse. If you should find during your daily experience that your consciousness seems to be darkened, it only takes a moment to walk away for a second and realize that you are the same consciousness that was in contemplation in the morning, that the morning is now, that now is the morning, and that the same inspiration, the same light, the same life, the same identical consciousness is right here as your consciousness. Try it. You may be surprised at what takes place. It does help, I assure you. Never leave love out of your contemplation. Never leave love out of your contemplation before you depart for your business during the day. Never leave love out of your contemplation or out of your experience in your dealing with others. Oh, there is power in this love. Love is the power. Did you know that it is this realization of being love itself that is your immunity to all the so-called injustices of the world? It is knowing that you are love, that love is all there is. Love is all that can be realized. Love is all that can be experienced. That is your immunity to all the so-called world of selfishness, self-seeking, self-interest, and all that goes along with it. You know, Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. Well, your kingdom is not of this world. And because your kingdom is not of the world of selfishness, you are immune to all of this so-called world's laws of selfishness. You are your own immunity. It is because your kingdom, which is your consciousness, is not a consciousness of the world, that you are not under any of its so-called laws of evil of any name or any nature. Now, before going further, let us have a brief recapitulation. We have seen that the mind, the intelligence which is God, is identified as your intelligence. We have seen that the infinite intelligence is being intelligent as your mind. We have seen that the life which is God is alive as your life. We have seen that this life is living, that it is alive as your life right here and right now. We have seen that the consciousness that is God is conscious as your consciousness. We have seen that your very consciousness or awareness of existence is God, aware of being itself as you. In other words, we have seen that your entire identity is God, identified as you. Your entire identity is God identifying and evidencing itself as yourself. We have also seen that God fulfills his purpose in being by being you, and that your activity is but God actively fulfilling his purpose as your activity. We have arrived at the revelation that God is your substance and that God is the activity of your substance. For years we have said that God is the only substance. This is true, but we realize so little of how true it is. We've realized so little of how far we had to see, how far we had to go in order to know completely the truth we were stating. But it is true, God is the only substance. But when we say this, we should go all the way. You know, this is the thing about the ultimate. The ultimate goes all the way. And when we say God is the only substance, we should go all the way with this statement. This means that we should realize that all substance, including the substance of the body, is eternal, without beginning, without change, without ending. Now, going all the way means that we realize no substance is born. There is no birth. God is not born. God is the only substance. How can there be substance that is born? There is no substance that matures. God is the only substance. God does not come to maturity. God does not mature. And there is no substance that dies. God is life eternal. God does not die. God is the only substance. What substance exists that can die? There is no sick or diseased or ailing substance. God is the only substance. And the substance that is God cannot be sick. The substance that is God cannot be ailing. The substance that is God cannot be diseased. And this, my dear one, is the substance of your body. Now, of course, these are only words making statements of fact, but as the fact they are stating comes alive, or as it surges forth in and as your own consciousness, why, these words will be swallowed up in the glorious light that reveals the truth they have stated from within your own consciousness. Now let us again consider the universe. As we've stated again and again, God is the universe. The boundless, limitless universe itself is God. Within this universe, there is an infinite variety of forms, an infinite variety of expressions, and of identities. But in order that the genuine and only substance, form, and identity of anyone or anything be realized, it is necessary to look beyond, or rather to look right through, what seems to be matter, and actually see what is right within your vision. Jesus knew this. In fact, he said it. In the Gospel according to Thomas, he says, quote, "Know what is in thy sight, and what is hidden from thee will be revealed to thee." End of quote. Now this is exactly what Jesus did. Jesus knew what was right within his sight. He saw what was there. He saw right through the dream stuff called matter and perceived the genuine substance, the genuine form and activity which was right before him. To the man with the withered hand, he merely said, "Stretch forth thine hand." He didn't mention anything about healing the hand. As a matter of fact, he didn't see any hand in need of healing. All he saw was the perfect hand that had always been that particular hand. He saw what was there. He saw only the perfect substance and the perfect form of the hand that was already there. What prevents us from seeing what is in our sight? And what is it that is concealed from us, but was revealed to Jesus? Furthermore, why was it revealed to Jesus, and it does not seem to be revealed to us? You know, Jesus said, "Having eyes ye see not." In another place in the Bible, he is reported as saying, "If ye were blind, then would you see." All right, what's the matter with us? Why don't we see the way Jesus saw? We do not really see what is right within our vision because we are seeing through a glass darkly, seeing through so-called eyes of matter darkly, seeing darkness and density in the place where there is only light. Do you know that just so long as it seems to us that we see through eyes of matter, we are going to seem to see matter? Do you know that it is only because of the illusion that vision must be filtered through pieces of matter called eyes that we seem to see pieces of matter when there are no pieces of matter? This is why Jesus said, "If you were blind, then ye would see." If we did not believe in or accept eyes of matter as vehicles through which vision had to be strained, we would see spiritually. We would see what really is here, and we would see everything the way it is in its eternal, glorious, changeless beauty, rather than as it appears when it seems to have to be viewed through the density of matter. Jesus walked around in illumination. He didn't see with eyes of matter. Jesus knew that the eyes of matter that seemed to be there were not actual. He knew they were not vehicles through which his vision had to be strained. The light that Jesus was and knew himself to be simply saw right through the seeming veil called matter and perceived what? Perceived the body of light that is seen when the eye is single, when we are not seeing double, when we are not seeing God's Spirit and something that is not God, when we are not deceived into thinking that we have to see through eyes that are not God being that substance. Remember, God could not be the substance of eyes of matter. Do you know that it takes the body of light to see the body of light? Do you know that it takes the eyes of light to see light itself? We do not see with eyes of matter actually, no matter how real or true or genuine so-called material forms and densities may appear to be. The I that is single is the I that is comprised of the light which is consciousness itself. Seeing as this I, we see perfectly. Seeing as this I, this vision, we see perfection and perfection only. Do you know that before Jesus could have seen a body of darkness, of imperfection, of density, he would have had to be a consciousness of darkness? Before he could have seen a body of darkness, of density, he would have had to have been a consciousness of density and imperfection. There is no such consciousness, so there really is no such consciousness as your consciousness or as mine. Be ye not deceived. This evil-seeming consciousness is not your consciousness. It is not mine. It is not consciousness. There is no such consciousness, for God is all, and God is the only consciousness, and God is only conscious of itself. Do you see what we are doing here? Why, we are going to strip the veil from before our genuine and only vision, and we are going to see this substance and form of light and beauty that has seemed to be concealed from us. What has prevented us from seeing it as it is? The illusion that the eyes are composed of matter, and that those eyes of matter are vehicles through which we see. But if God be all, and God is spirit, where and what are eyes of matter? They aren't anywhere. They're not anything. They're not substance, because God is the only substance. They see nothing. They have no existence. They have no form. God is the only one who sees. It is the illusion that we have eyes of matter that prevents us from really seeing right what is in our sight. You know, in illumination, all so-called material vision disappears, and we really do see with and as the eye of spirit. We really do see with and as the eye of light of consciousness. This is because we are not seeing through our eyes or as eyes of density. We do not see density because we are not looking through something that pretends to be density. It is our enlightened consciousness that sees, and it is our enlightened consciousness that is seen. There are many who have seen this body of light that is seen when the eye is single. There are many who have seen this universe as it is, rather than it appears to be. As a matter of fact, in almost every class I give, during this class, there will be some who see the body of light, who see the room as a blaze of glorious light, who perceive things as they are. It is just as though a veil just is lifted from before their eyes, and they really see things as they are. This often happens during a private interview, too. But we are not the only ones. There are others who have seen this and are seeing this light, who are seeing as consciousness and not as eyes of matter. Now, of course, just seeing the body of light wouldn't help very much if that is all that takes place. But there is more, much more. So we'll discover during this record. Before going on, though, I would like to tell you this. Just recently, I read a book written by one of the most famous physicists of today. And one place in this book, he refers specifically to the seeing of the thing and that which is seen. And he makes it clear that their tests have proved that there is something that seems to take place between the seeing of an object that transforms the appearance of the object between the seeing of it and the object itself. Now, they have proved this to their own satisfaction. They don't know what this is. They don't know what it is that transforms it, that makes it look different, that distorts it, gives it a different appearance than what it really is, that even their faulty so-called fact-finding can realize or present. But nonetheless, they do realize that what the so-called material eye sees and what is seen is altogether different. That is a distortion, that what is seen is distorted through the seeing of it by so-called eyes of matter. Well, now what takes place here? Why is this? Why, this is just the very thing we were talking about a moment ago. It is because it appears that the eye of matter is that vehicle through which the vision must be strained. It is because it is the eye of matter, or the illusion of an eye of matter, that the distortion seems to be. And one day, the physicists themselves are going to realize that neither the vision takes place through eyes of matter, nor does the object that is being seen exist as a piece of matter. That will come. They are on their way. And when they stop this thing of trying to interpret everything they find from the standpoint of matter, and begin to reinterpret these things from the spiritual standpoint, then look out. Then they really will have arrived. Let us hope that we arrive too. And no doubt we will, because look where we are right now. You know, this is not a direct quote, but in the Gospel according to Thomas, Jesus speaks of our having 5 trees in paradise which are unmoved in summer or in winter, and their leaves do not fall. Well, this refers to the genuine and only vision. This refers to hearing or to any other so-called senses of what we call man. It is true that we're supposed to have 5 senses. Actually, there is but one sense. This sense is consciousness. There are various functions of this one consciousness, and we call these functions seeing, hearing, smelling, and tasting, and so forth. But actually, there are many more than 5 functions of consciousness, as you will discover one of these days. When we realize that if we were unconscious, we would see nothing. If we were unconscious, we'd hear nothing, know nothing, feel nothing, touch nothing, experience nothing. When we realize this, we can see that all that sees, all that hears is consciousness. All that experiences, all that feels is consciousness. But here is the important point. God is consciousness. God is your consciousness. It is not you that sees or hears through eyes or ears of matter. It is God consciousness who sees as you're seeing, who hears as you're hearing, and there is no substance excepting God through which God can see or hear. Therefore, if you have eyes, if you have ears, those eyes, those ears have to be comprised of the very substance that is God. Otherwise, they have no existence. So, you can see from this that the substance of the spiritual eye that sees is the substance of the spiritual existence that it sees. The substance of the spiritual ear that hears is the substance of the spiritual beauty that it hears. It's all God. It's all God. There is nothing but God. Yes, it is God. God consciousness who sees as you're seeing. It is God consciousness who hears as you're hearing. This is the way Jesus saw and heard, and this is the way we can see and hear when our consciousness is enlightened. Now we may ask, is this practical? What good is it? Well, it was pretty practical in Jesus' experience. It was his clear conscious seeing that revealed the perfection of the seemingly withered hand. It was this clear conscious seeing that proved itself to be true when he saw no death, you'll remember he said to the maid, damsel, arise. Another time he said, the maid is not dead, but sleepeth. Lazarus, come forth, said Jesus. All of this was pretty practical, wasn't it? It was quite practical when Jesus wanted to be at the other side of the lake. And he was there. He didn't have to spend a lot of what the world calls time getting there. It was practical when Jesus realized that there were no solid walls. You know, we often think about Jesus, and they speak about him going through the walls as though the walls were solid, but as though the body of the one they called Jesus was not solid, as though that body were spirit. But Jesus knew that there were no solid walls. There was no density, no solidity in the walls any more than there was density or solidity in or as his own body. There is no solidity. There is no matter of any kind or name or nature. Why, it was this same realization that enabled Jesus to present his own body alive and well after they thought they had killed him. It also enables him to present his body right today, whenever he wishes. Oh, there are those who have seen Jesus, and it is no hallucination either. Neither is it anything mystical or mysterious in any way. It's perfectly natural. Now, what were some of the truths that Jesus knew that enabled him to see right through the illusion of matter? Well, they were just exactly what we are beginning to perceive right here as we listen to this tape. But we must see more, even as Jesus did. We must perceive the eternal, perfect, changeless nature of all substance and form. We must perceive that nothing is ever born, and that nothing ever perishes, nothing ever dies. Nothing appears in this universe, and nothing disappears from this universe. We must perceive that the evidence of God is God. We must perceive that the evidence of perfection is perfection itself. Jesus knew there was neither birth nor death, because he was aware that the only substance in existence was and is God, infinity, the eternal, beginningless, changeless, endless universe itself. The substance that is the infinite is the substance that is the infinitesimal. There are not substances. There is one God. There is one substance. There are distinct aspects of this one substance, but it is the same substance. It does not change substance by being or identifying itself as distinct aspects of itself. There is life everywhere. The very air is life. It is active, and all activity is life. There is no inactive substance. You know, just recently one of the great physicists of the world came out with a statement that it was his conviction that there is life throughout all of what has been called outer space. Indeed there is, because there is God everywhere. Well, there is life everywhere. Wherever there is life, there is consciousness. For life and consciousness are indivisible. So wherever there is life, there is conscious life. This means there is conscious life everywhere. This is God. This means that there is perfect conscious life everywhere, for God is perfection. The consciousness of this fact is all there is to illumination. Now, there are many types of forms. There's the form of music, the form of poetry, the form of art. Oh yes, beauty appears in many, many forms. Any poet will tell you that poetry has form. Any musician will tell you that the great compositions of the world have great forms. In fact, a Bach fugue could be drawn so that you would see a beautiful cathedral. And there is color in music, too. There is substance in music. The substance of the tone itself is music. Of course, another type of form, of substance and form, is the substance in the form of the planets, the bodies of you and me. Oh yes, this is all substance and form. Now the substance and the activity of each form is perfect conscious life, perfect conscious beauty, intelligence. This perfect essence in form that we have been misinterpreting as matter is really perfect mind, perfect consciousness, life in form. This is true of the infinite universe. It is also true of the infinitesimal. Just a few months ago, you may have read in the newspaper about the man who was given the Nobel Prize for being the first one to photograph the atom. Now, I've seen a picture of that photograph. In fact, I saw this picture of a cluster of atoms, and they were taken from the point of a very finely sharpened needle. Now, this picture of these atoms has been magnified many, many times. In fact, I believe it has been magnified 15 million times. So you can imagine how very infinitesimal the atoms themselves must appear to be. But the important point about this, of course, is the perfection of the arrangement of these atoms. Each one is perfectly spaced. Each one is in such a design that it is really a design of beauty itself. And there is light. You can actually see the light. And after studying this picture for a while, you can imagine yourself looking into the heavens and seeing the arrangement of the stars in the skies. The form of each atom is perfection itself. It is evident in the picture that the substance of the form is perfection itself, and the order in which these atoms are arranged is perfection itself. Now, of course, we're not talking about material atoms. You realize that, I know. But how could the substance, the form, or the arrangement of these atoms be anything less than perfect when it is all actually God, perfection itself, revealing itself as what it is? Now, what is the substance of these things that they call atoms? What is the form? What is the order in which they are placed? If there is so much as one single form called atom, God has to be the substance of that form. God has to be the form of that substance. If there is such a thing as an arrangement, an orderly arrangement of atoms, God has to be the intelligence, the beauty, the order of that arrangement, revealing itself, or there is no order, there is no arrangement of atoms. Not too long ago, I was talking with an astronomer, and he said this to me. He said, I am beginning to wonder, although I have not mentioned this to my colleagues, I am beginning to wonder if perhaps the light that we see on the stars is not reflected light, but if it is not possible that perhaps the stars are light through and through. Well, of course, I didn't say a word, but I couldn't help but feel, well, my friend, you are not far from the kingdom, the consciousness of God. Indeed, those stars are light through and through. Indeed, if there are atoms, those atoms are light through and through. Indeed, if there is a universe, and there is, this universe is a universe of light. It is light through and through. But you can see, in going from the light in form, that is the substance of the stars themselves, to the light in form, that is what they call the atom. We are going from what would seem to be infinity itself to the infinitesimal, and it is exactly the same light. It is exactly the same same mind. It is the same consciousness. It is the same God being. But now let us return for just a moment to this idea of the substance in form. It does seem paradoxical that the only substance in form that appears to have density, that appears to have solidity, that appears to be dark, is that substance in form which appears to be seen through so-called eyes of matter. But somewhere in the Bible there is a statement something like this: we do not dwell in darkness, but we have the light of life. Well, actually, what that means is that we do not live in or as a body of matter, but we live in and as a body of light itself. Not that we are confined to the body, you understand, but our body itself is a body of light. You know, the claim about a body of matter is that it is darkness itself. It's supposed to be dark in here, you see. But actually, we do not dwell in temples made with hands. We do not live in a body of darkness, of density, of solidity. Oh, when we come into the realization that the consciousness that is the body itself is exactly the same consciousness that would be called or could be called the whole universe, and there is no difference in this consciousness. It does not become a different consciousness just because it is in the form of the body itself. It's all light. The whole body is light, but the whole universe is light. It is the universal light in form that is the body. Now, Jesus knew this. Jesus knew that this infinite substance, which was and is his consciousness, his life, was the substance of all form. In the Gospel according to Thomas, he says, quote, I am the light that is above them all. I am the all. Cleave a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up a stone, and you will find me there. End of quote. And this is true as each and every one of us, because no matter where you are or what you are, the consciousness that you are is the same consciousness that is the substance of everything and everyone that exists. Yes, cleave a piece of wood, and you will find this wood to be this consciousness. Lift up a stone, you will find this stone to be this consciousness. Now, this is not pantheism. This is not placing intelligence in matter. This is seeing that there is no matter for intelligence to be in. All form is consciousness in form. All form that involves substance is consciousness as the substance in or as that particular form. Yes, it is this way with all of us. No matter what we see, the I am, the consciousness that we are, is the substance and the form of what is in our sight. No wonder Jesus said, know what is in thy sight. Now, let us speak specifically of the body. The Bible says there is one body and one spirit. This is true. God, the universe itself, is the one infinite body. Now let us make no mistake about this. We are not thinking of the body of God as having boundaries. There is no boundary for infinity itself. Nonetheless, The universe itself can be called the body of God. Now the Bible also says the body has many members. There is one body, but the body has many members. Now this is true also. This infinite body, which is God, life, mind, consciousness, does consist of an infinite, universal variety of members. In fact, the word infinite itself has two meanings. Infinite meaning without boundaries, but infinite means innumerable as well. So when we speak of the infinite variety, when we speak of the infinite members of this infinite body, we are speaking of the innumerable members that are included in and as the completeness of this infinite body, which is the body of God. Everybody in this universe is a member of the body of God. There can be not one single body, not one single form of substance in this universe.
I hope you enjoy this spiritual audio. Like, share and subscribe for more.